I guess, in other words, you're saying if this is implemented well, if this agreement is implemented well, it results into a lot more trust between the community and the police, and that trust will lead into better policing, because policing is quite a difficult job, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It's a really tough job, and we do understand that. But to generalize and to racially profile a whole community means that you're actually making the policing work, a lot harder than what it needs to be. Being lazy, I think it's lazy policing when officers, take out their grievances or the fact that they couldn't catch a perpetrator of a crime on any other young African they see. And that lazy policing, comes to bite you in the back.
And do you think on the side of the young African male, mostly, who are concerned by this, do you think this is likely to lead to any change of behavior, at least for those who may from time to time have some an unwanted or an undesired encounter with the police force?
I guess once we start seeing more positive encounters with the police and actually getting the police accountable for their actions, once people see more accountability, those young people will start to begin to believe that their rights can be respected. That they do have rights, that an officer can't come and basically do whatever he or she wants to do or say and get away with it. So once that respect is shown, that relationship can actually begin to develop. But nobody likes anybody standing over them. And that's how the young African males feel, and that's where you have a lot of incidents where there's this huge escalation because young people feel they're being stood over by the police, that they don't have the freedom to walk around like everybody else does, and so that kind of defensive mentality or attitude results in a lot of situations escalating.
And what do you think started this in the first place? Is it just that Victoria Police, in your words, has been in some instances lazy in doing right policing, or is it that there is a significant amount of racism within the force, or is it that maybe in that area, the mentality and the culture there around Flemington was that, African male were of some sort of profile and you had to go hard on them? What, in your understanding, what has started this in the first place?
I think it's a combination of all those things. It's lazy policing, it's racism, it's the lack of accountability within Victoria Police. And there's a heavy African population there, so they don't have any networks or ties into the community, and they think, or they begin to believe, for some officers, that that these young people are the ones who hang out together all the time, or some kind of gang, not understanding that traditionally we do enjoy each other's company, and sometimes it's kind of for security reasons, not security as in someone's going to come and attack you, but
a sense of safety and mateship. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, because I think when you go to a school where you're sitting there all day with people we're basically being brought up in a very white culture, where all the influential leaders are white, and you don't see yourself reflected or anybody like you reflected, so you don't really have any role models. You don't really have many leaders that you can kind of look up to or mentors that you can see in your community. So, when you do get a chance to, sit around with people from a similar background to you, who have a similar understanding and belief system, then, it kind of, it just relaxes you. You don't have to explain yourself as much.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think, generally, in society, you always have to explain, who you are, and sometimes your presence and where you're from. And sometimes people are just curious, but sometimes people are actually questioning, why you're here.
See what you mean. All right, we'll take another break, and when we come back, we'll talk about the way forward, and I'll see you on the other side of the break. We have built AMA as a platform for everyone.
We want you to run your own segment about your own area of interest on AMA. If you have a business, a talent, or an idea, AMA is ready to work with you.
This year, let us make AMA the biggest and the most influential media platform for Africans and for friends of Africans. So if you can, invite us to your community events.
We have built a platform for you and we want you to use it. You can run your own segments in any area of your interest as long as it brings value to the African Australians here in Australia.
Do you have ideas and talents you want everyone to see? African Media Australia is here for you. We're happy to promote those videos of yours. We're happy to promote your businesses. We're happy to promote those ideas that are inside of you.
AMA is for you.
Please contact us, African Media Australia. AMA is here for you and we're here to stay.
Welcome back. All right, now Daniel, let's talk about the future now. Actually, before we do that, we have to say that, just to be fair to the police as well, that these events happened mostly around 2005 up to 2009, and there's been quite a bit of change since then. Is that correct?
I'd like to think so. I've heard since the court case, like I said earlier, people are starting to open up. And a couple of months ago, two of my friends told me two different incidents. One was a group of 20 or so 15-year-olds or 16-year-olds were told to kneel down on their knees. And, this officer, actually, my friend got a phone call. He's about 16 or 17. And he was told to come into a police station because, he apparently committed a crime. And once he got into the police station, there was a row of like 20 young people. And they were all told to kneel on their knees, and an officer took a photo of them. So, in my mind, I thought things got better.
You think it's still happening in the same intensity that it used to happen when you were growing up in Flemington?
I guess maybe not the same intensity, but it still is happening. And I think there still is a lot of racism that exists, especially taking photos of, like, what does that symbolize? Like, the Africans are less superior. So to 15-year-olds too, man, the kids.
Now, we have seen over the last recent years that the police has started to engage a bit more with the African community. Do you agree? And do you see any value in that? Or are there still a lot of gaps that needs to be filled?
I think they've increased their presence within the community. And I think more than anything, I don't want to sound too pessimistic, but more than anything, it's like a policing intelligence gathering. And they want to know who's within the community, what they're doing. And so, but for the community itself, I don't think they're addressing their accountability issue. I think they're still looking at it. There's still this standoff where, the police right, there's nothing wrong. They don't have to address the accountability, but there's crime within the African community that they need to address. And this is the story that they keep pitching out to the community, that the African community has an issue with crime. And as we've seen, as we've heard many times before, there was a professor from Melbourne University who actually looked at the LEAP records with the police and compared the crime stats and also how often people were being pulled over, and he found that the African community within Flemington and North Melbourne and Kensington area committed significantly less crime than the general population, but they were 2.5 times more likely to be pulled over and questioned
by the police
than the general community. And so I think that's very strong evidence to suggest that that racial profiling exists, and that if you look at the crime rates, if you're pulling over and stopping a community 2.5 times more likely, then if you do a bit of simple maths, then obviously that community is going to be more represented in the general crime rates stats, because they're being pulled over and stopped and questioned a lot more often than anybody else. And so instead of addressing the issues of accountability, instead of thinking about how they can stop these assaults happening on the young people, and addressing that issue, they've kind of come from a kind of defensive mechanism, where it's like, we're not the problem, you're the problem. And so the police presence is kind of justified because we're cleaning up the streets to protect your assets.
Which actually leads me to the question that we also have to acknowledge that there are some issues within a section of young Africans, which is real and is probably not as big as it is presented to be, but it is there. Is that is that fair to say?
It definitely is, but I think it comes from that issue of you're already being, as a young person, you grow up in an environment where those things are normalized, they're accepted. And I think if you want to challenge that, then it's surprising, it's funny, like growing up in an environment like that, it's a miracle if you actually get out of it and go to university and lead what the general population has, which is like a normal life, like every other community. There is issues,
yes,
and they need to be addressed from a higher level. First of all, let's try and find better accommodation, maybe not these environments for these young people to grow up in the first place. But I also think that there needs to be a lot of mentors who come back into the community, the ones who are successful and who are doing really good stuff, to come back and prove and show, not only to the wider community, but to the young people growing up on these estates, that you can achieve even though you have all these odds that are stacked up against you.
What do you see happening with this inquiry that the police is going to be starting, and what do you see happening within the community? What are the people talking about, and how to best ensure that the agreement that was reached in this case actually ends up with a positive result that will be satisfactory both to the community and to the police?
Well, I guess from the community side of it, there's a million stories that are coming out. This happened to me. It seems that as if every person I kind of have an experience with has a story about the police, and most of the times it's not a positive one. And so I think instead of every person from the African community suing the police one by one, a better way to kind of resolve this issue is, most members of the community generally, if they could see a change that's happening within Victoria Police, so that the younger generation have a more positive experience, most people are just would be proud to be a part of that process. So I think this inquiry that's going to happen is what people are actually going to be looking at really, really strongly, you know, if this inquiry does go well, the whole community will be behind it, and you know, you'll begin to see, you know, a more stronger relationship between the police and the community.
And what do you think needs to happen for the inquiry to go well?
I think, okay, what needs to happen is those two things need to be addressed. The public submissions that happen, you know, there needs to be sufficient time for the public to actually put in submissions and say, you know, these are our experiences, and these are the shortcomings that exist within the system, and these are how you can change it. And if Victoria Police actually acts on those things, then the police, the community will feel like, okay, we do have some input and we can actually work with the police. And they're actually being sincere about it, because a lot of people think that the police are just saying this for the sake of it, and they're just waiting for the media to die down, and there's not going to be any results that change policing for the generations to come. And so we need to kind of change that. We need to prove those people wrong by ensuring that, you know, the cultural training is more appropriate. You know, you're not telling people that, you know, for example, the Sudanese community just came from a civil war and so they're more prone to violence. That's not the kind of education that you want to kind of pass on to new police recruits. Yeah. And also more accountability. And I think this is something the general public would love to see from Victoria Police. And I think there's a lot of people out there who would support the police in increasing the accountability and becoming more accountable to the public. So I guess also, you know,
from the community perspective, if you want to say something, what needs to happen to facilitate this inquiry process and ensure we get the best outcome from it?
So I guess from the community's perspective, as I mentioned before, it's, you know, it's more about having some really tangible results out of it. So the report that's released to the public in December needs to detail some really tangible actions that work towards, or you know, more accountability in the police. And one of the mechanisms for that was a receipting system that's been developed in the UK, or something similar to that.
Okay, well, you know, we could stay here for another hour and continue to talk about these issues, but unfortunately, we're running out of time. So, Daniel, you have made history with your case. We want to really congratulate you on the courage, because I think that's also one thing important. When Ken Lay, the Victoria Police Commissioner, held the press conference following the agreement at court, he actually said that these young people were leaders. So you are a leader, and you've taken the courage to challenge. You know, Victoria Police is one of the biggest institutions in this part of the country. So let's continue to have this conversation, not in a confrontational or antagonistic way, but in a way of looking for the solutions for the issues that we have. So we'll want to see you again. Come back next time to talk more about this issue. Thanks, Daniel.
Thank you, Clyde.
All right.